Alright, next video is distributive property. This is something that you may know what it is. You may have forgotten what it's called, but I think you've seen it before. So we're going to start with what is the distributive property and why use it. The distributive property is a way of multiplying terms separately instead of together. And so because it's separate, it can make really hard multiplication easier. Um, and so while you're copying that down, just a little bit of extra on that. Sometimes if you have two huge numbers that you have to multiply together, you've been taught that it's easier to kind of break it down uh, and multiply it in pieces. That's kind of what distributive property is. We will also see it with variables. And so it can be a way of multiplying numbers with variables as well, and doing this separately in two different pieces. What is a variable? We've been tossing around the term variable in the last few videos, and so just to kind of solidify what that is, it's a symbol for a number that we don't know or don't know the value of. A lot of times these are called unknowns because just like the definition says, we don't know exactly what it is. So a lot of times it's X, a lot of times it's Y, but we don't know exactly what number X stands for or what X equals, the value of X. And so in this example, it says use the distributive property to expand the following expression. Here we've got parentheses, and inside the parentheses it's 6 minus z over 4. And then outside of the parentheses there's a negative symbol. So what this tells us to do, what the distributive property tells us, is that this negative is a negative 1. So if you want to think about it that way, then what the distributive property tells us to do is to take whatever's out here and distribute it among what's on the inside. Okay, so we draw these little arrows to kind of indicate that the negative 1 is going to apply to both of them. And what we have after that is just two separate multiplications. So that's where this multiplying separately comes in. So we have two pieces. We have negative 1 times 6, which is negative 6. Then I copy down the minus. Whatever's here, you just copy it straight down. Okay. In this case, it's a minus, so I just copy down a minus. Then I have negative 1 times z over 4. 1 times anything is just itself. So this just becomes, since it's a negative 1, it becomes negative itself, opposite of itself. So this is negative z over 4. Okay? And so here's the first piece. Negative 1 times 6, represented right there. Here's the second piece. Negative 1, z over 4. And that's negative z over 4. Okay? So then we can combine those because we have subtracting a negative, which is the same if you do add the opposite, is negative 6 plus z over 4. Okay, and so on con then you would enter your answer like that. Okay. Other examples. This one's a little bit more straightforward actually. We'll draw in the arrows again. So draw those in on yours. Then that gives you 3, and I'm just writing this out now, 3 times 2x, copy down the plus, 3 times 7. Okay, then 3 times 2x, that's the same as 3 times 2 times x. So that's 3 times 2 is 6, so 6x. 3 times 7 is 21, so 6x plus 21. In the next one, draw in your little rainbows. 4 times 5x, 4 times 5 times x. Copy down a minus. The second part, 4 times 10. 4 times 5 is 20, so that's 20x minus 40. These next two get a little bit more complicated. There's a 2 here. There's no parentheses after this, so there's actually no distributive property to do for this part. I'm just going to leave that alone for now. I'm just going to copy it right there, and then minus. Here's where I do distributive property. Okay, there's a 4 in front of the parentheses. So that gives me 2 minus 4 times 5 times p. Copy down a plus. 4 times 1. Then that's 2 minus 20p plus 4. And now if you go back to the last video with combining like terms, I have a constant and another constant. So those I can combine together to get 6. And then I still have this minus 20p. Okay? And that's as simple as it can get. Over here I basically have 2 sets of parentheses, 2 different numbers, well they're the same, but two numbers on the outside. So I'm going to do distributive property twice. We're going to have to be really careful with negatives here because there's a lot of them. So we're going to treat this as a negative 4. That's negative 4 times z. Copy down the plus. Negative 4 times 3. And we're going to treat this as a negative 4, so that's negative 4 times 5. So plus negative 4 times 5. And then negative 4, copy down the minus, and then negative 4 times 4, which is negative 16z. Okay, so then this is negative 4z plus negative 12 plus, here's negative 20, and then add the opposite, so that's plus 16z. Then we've got like terms here and here, here and here. So combining those together, 16z, negative 4z, so that's 16 minus 4, that's 12z. And then negative 12 and negative 20 is negative 32. Okay, so our final answer, 12z minus 32. Then here's another problem from Khan. It says which expressions are equivalent to 3x plus 3 parentheses x plus y. The choices we are given here are written in different forms. It's either this one, or neither. So what we're going to do is use distributive property here, and we're going to simplify this as much as we can. And then we're going to simplify these as much as we can and see if they match up. So if I do distributive property here, that gives me, I'm just copying down 3x on the front, plus first arrow, 3 times x, second arrow, 3 times y. And then here's like terms, so I can combine these two and get 6x plus 3y. Then if you look at the first option over here, it's exactly that. So it has to be at least this one. So on Khan I would, check that one. Then we're not sure about this one. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bring this down here, and we're going to simplify that. So that's 3x plus x plus y. And here I can do distributive property. I just this time have 3 terms. So that gives me first arrow 3 times x, second arrow 3 times x, third arrow 3 times y. Combine like terms again. This should look familiar. But this is 6x plus 3y, which is again the same as what I had up here. So that tells you these two are the same, so that means you can check that one too. Okay? So actually both of those ended up being equivalent or the same.